Starting a podcast is not something you want to do if you just want to become famous, if you're a small business owner. If you want to get lots of new leads, then starting a podcast probably isn't the thing you want to do. But if you want to engage your audience, if you want them to binge listen or binge watch your content, if you want them to see you as an authority very, very quickly, then a podcast is exactly what you need to do. So you need to just shift your mindset and understand what a podcast is for if you're in a business. And if you understand that, you can use it to your advantage. And that is what this video is all about. All right, I'm Marlon Marisha, and today I want to talk about podcasts. And if you are a B2B business or even B2C business, then a podcast is a great idea, but not the way you think. If you think you're going to be the next Joe Rogan, if you think you're going to be the next superstar podcaster, then you're probably wrong, right? It's very rare to be that good at podcasting, but you don't need to be. You don't need followers that go into the millions. You don't need followers that go into the hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. You just don't need that if you want it to be powerful. You've got to think about this. When you get a prospect into your funnel, who comes on your radar, who's into your world, they've subscribed to your email list, or they've liked your page on Facebook, or they've subscribed to your YouTube channel, or they've visited your website, at that point, you can become the most important person in your industry for that one person. Now, what a podcast is good for is becoming that number one influencer or authority in the industry. How? Well, if that person subscribes to your podcast or downloads an episode of the podcast and listens to it, it's so easy in a podcast for them to then listen to the next episode and the next, because they just autoplay. And you can basically have a prospect binge listen to all of your episodes or 10 or 20 episodes of your podcast while they're mowing the lawn, while they're working out. Now, to get them onto the podcast, yes, it's not easy to do, but once you have them, potentially you can indoctrinate them with the way you think and become the authority to them. Don't try and start a podcast so you can be the next Joe Rogan, so you can have millions of people who love you. Start it for the few people in your world who you can then influence and educate about how you can help them. And if your podcast is interesting to them, now it really should repel people who aren't interested in your product or service and seriously attract people who are. It's going to be very specific. It could be frequently asked questions that they would ask and you answer them one at a time. It could be client testimonials. It could be stories about ways that you have overcome certain challenges for other clients. It could be interviews with other experts in the field. Whatever it is, if it is important to them, they will listen and they will listen and they will listen. And through that listening process, you will become the authority in their world. And that's how you should think. So think about this. It's really hard to get thousands and millions of people to listen to your podcast, but it's not that hard to get 1, 2, 3, or 4 people who are so engaged that they will book an appointment in your calendar. So yes, at the end of every podcast, you should have a call to action to book an appointment, because you're not really there to have people just to subscribe to the podcast. You don't really need that. What you need is when someone listens to it to book an appointment. And so you've got to set your podcast up in a certain way that gets appointments booked. I want to encourage you, change your mindset around podcasts. Understand that a podcast is there for a business to indoctrinate and to create authority with the prospect. And don't expect thousands upon thousands of people to actually subscribe. Just care about the people in your world to subscribe. You should have a follow-up email sequence when someone downloads a lead magnet to say to them, hey, listen to the podcast. Click to subscribe on iTunes or Spotify. You should have a Facebook ad potentially that gets retargeted to people who have engaged with your content to subscribe to the podcast. You should have the podcast on your homepage so people who hit your website can subscribe to the podcast. And the list goes on and on and on. You need to be quiet. You need to think of other ways of doing it, right? Be creative. If you have that mindset, a podcast is a vital tool in your strategy to get a prospect in your world to book an appointment, to get a cold prospect warm them up and get them hot so they're ready to speak to you. And a podcast is a fantastic way of building authority. How many businesses in your industry have a podcast? How many businesses in your industry who have a podcast give useful information that indoctrinates people on the way you think? So then when they get on a call with you, there's a shift. You're not a salesperson anymore. You are an authority that they are coming to seek help. And that when that shifts, when that becomes a reality for you, you are not a salesperson anymore. You don't have to sell. You're kind of filtering people to see who you would like to work with. I want to encourage you, go and start your podcast. And I'll just give you one more tip. The way you do it is you record a video every week or every month or every day. And that video you put on YouTube, but you also extract the audio and that becomes your podcast. So you're kind of using it's repurposing the content. So you don't have to create a special podcast episode. You can create content for YouTube, for your blog, for your email list, and that same thing you can convert into a podcast. If you want to know more about how to do that, join my Facebook group where I help entrepreneurs and business owners do this type of thing. Around this video, there'll be a button where you can click and you can join, and there's lots of training in that group. All right, have a great day. Speak to you soon. Bye.